Perfect. Thank you, David. I guess I take away two key things. Real world, mobile, and online is one and the same thing. And the second point that David mentioned is that payment methods have increased thousandfolds. While that may be true, I think we should come back to the panel to tell us whether we're going to throw away our wallets and pay through new revolutionary means of payment in the future. But before doing so, perhaps we go to our 4 other panelists and ask, if you were to single out the one single most important piece of innovation in your quick words, what would it be? Pieter from Seamless.
Well, there actually hasn't been any innovation whatsoever. I mean, often when you go to this type of events and you talk about mobile payments or online payments, they could be basically named 10 different ways of accepting a Visa MasterCard. Because that's what you're doing. So, you know, it's not really exciting, actually.
I would like to challenge Nick to disagree with that.
I think, can you hear me? Yes. I think payment is quite exciting, and I think, I mean, I agree. There's not so much innovation, but in the end, it's about this mission that we all have, which is to make that payment happen. And from that perspective, it's still about, you know, making it frictionless, making it very easy for the consumer and for the merchant. I think one piece of innovation actually was 2 or 3 years ago when banks and other companies started making bank transfers instant. I thought this was really great. I talk about Ideal in the Netherlands, also Vorüberweisung in Germany. But you know, about the key mission we have of making payments happen, I think, you know, those gentlemen from Ogone and Adyen do an amazing job on working on the merchant side, but you also have to work on the consumer side. In the end, you guys are still losing 20–30% of your customers because they can't pay. And the goal must be that the customer pays with one click. For example, Amazon, for example, PayPal, or ourselves. And that's what I see as innovation is, you know, educating the consumer and making this more frictionless.
Interesting, thank you. Celine?
Yes, I share your point of view. We have to provide a very simple user experience for the merchant, provide data and transparency. Just a quick idea for Litchi. When I started the company, it's a group payment platform. So, for example, very easy for a group birthday gift. When I had the idea of the company, everyone told me, well, there is PayPal. You can send money in PayPal. It's right. But we provided such an easy experience, Facebook connecting, and very simple experience that we had lots of customers. We have 500,000 customers, and we are growing 30% a month. So the basic idea is to provide a very simple user experience, data for the merchant, and transparency.
Thank you. And Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, so obviously I have a very specialist fraud perspective on this, and I'm one of those 4 suppliers that Adyen talked about in that complicated value chain. And the point I would make is that actually there's room for that type of model because of the specialism that it implies and because of the ability to cover the entire payment value chain, which is seamless, which is global. Fraud just moves around all over the world. And so through our model, because we see the issuer side and the merchant side of the transaction, we can get away from the liability shift argument and link those 2 sets of data so that the merchant and the issuer are chasing the same fraudster. And actually, that's the biggest innovation we've launched in the last year through the Red Fraud Exchange. As you said, I'd try and sell something today, so I will. But this is a unique opportunity for the issuer and the merchant to collaborate effectively through switching that data between them to both target the same bad guy.
Thank you. So how about we spend 2 more minutes on the merchant side, then move to the consumer? What I would like to ask the panel is payments alone enough? Will payments on the merchant side, will it have to be more in the years to come? Will you have to offer other services together with payments to make the proposition interesting to the merchant?
Well, I think you have to differ between online and physical store merchants. A physical store works fine. They have the card, they have cash. They're not going to do any change unless they make money on it. That's why a mobile payment system that uses the card is pointless. And that's also why mobile payments, who've been around for a while, is not really getting any traction. When you're online, you can obviously not accept cash. So you need to have, you're forced into the card sort of system. But I think you have to follow the money. The fee outtake, according to McKinsey, and but the fee outtake globally on the in the card business is $600 billion a year. That's a lot of money. It's the fee is on average 1.89% for any transaction, and for a lot of merchants, that's pretty much half their profit or more. So what needs to happen is that you have invention or innovation that makes the payment cheaper for the merchant. And it's the merchants that will drive it, because it's too little for the consumer to care, to change for economical reasons. So the payment method you have to add other stuff to it.
Sure, thank you. Peter and David, what do you do to add more to the merchants? Peter, you showed the terminal. So I guess you break in that wall between online and offline. So you are giving them more for less. Is that right?
There are a few movements which I think is very important. It's, I think there's something going to change at the point of sale actually, because it's a point of contact with the shopper. And you see advanced companies using that. So you need a multi-channel solution. So you recognize at the payment that shopper. So you could give him an online voucher, which you can redeem at the point of sale. I think that's all going to integrate much more, because that's a way to make money. So that's a trend which I find very important. And the other one is, yeah, again, about conversion, making in-store. I think that in-store and online are moving together. It might be because I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. That's the part of the market which I'm seeing. But there are so many companies, whether it's Marks and Spencers or whether it's a suit supply, they all have an online presence, an offline presence, and it all gets together. So we're adding a lot of services there to make that through one report, one interface, one company you can work with.
David, do you agree with that?
Yes, and I mean, for me, I think our role is quite simple at some level. It's to help merchants sell more profitably, and I think you can focus on cost, and there is a lot of cost potentially involved. But where we are able to improve conversions for merchants, either by giving them new ways of taking money, by making it easier for the customer to pay, or by accepting more payments because we have a deeper understanding of fraud, I mean, I think that's where merchants get very excited and where we really earn our keep.
Sure. So fraud is a big thing, and Paul, you catch a lot of it. So do you end up working with these guys or competing with these guys?
It's a complicated market, of course, and last year we stopped over $2 billion worth of e-commerce fraud alone, and saw something like 1 in 10 of all transactions in the world as well. That means that on occasions we're partnering with PSPs and other payment providers. On occasions when they launch their own fraud solutions, they'll compete with us in that space, but that tends not to be long term. Ultimately, there'll be merchants that transact with them that become too complicated or too big to be satisfied by the fraud solution within the PSP, and that's when our opportunity arises. Ultimately, the consumer, the merchant, the card issuer, and the regulator want the same commodity values from a payment. It needs to be quick, it needs to be secure, it needs to be cheap. Our specialism is delivering the secure part of that transaction.
That's great, thank you. So for those of you in the audience who are merchants, internet companies, I think there's good news coming. This panel has committed to give you better service, more integrated, at lower cost. So I think then there's the second half of payments, which is the consumer part, which I feel is still unanswered, in the sense that we do have the credit cards, we do have the wallets. Is there any other means of payment really coming, or is all this innovation, integration, catching fraud, maximizing conversion, is it all good news just for the merchants? Perhaps Nick and Celine could comment on that.
I mean, Celine, do you want? I mean, what is a wallet? And you say a credit card or wallet. It's really not either or, but I think what's important is that you give the user a choice. So the user wants to pay, and if his credit card, issued by his Deutsche Bank doesn't work, he wants to use a different one, and that's what a wallet facilitates. A wallet is nothing else than an account where you, as a consumer, leave your payment details, your credit card details, your bank account details, and then you give the mandate to your payments company. It can be PayPal or Moneybook or Skrill or even Amazon, and then they make this payment. So I think this is where, because you asked before, where can a payments company add value? And I think this is one point, because it makes this payment more frictionless. Other than that, I agree. You know, fraud is a key concern, and again, that is something we think that a payments company can manage for the merchant. The merchant's business is to bring customers onto the site and to sell a product, and the more we can handle for him in the back end, we as payments companies, from fraud to conversion to managing the cost, I think the better and the more value we can generate for the merchants.
No, yes, I agree. You have to let to your users the more choice, and it will be the easiest. We can notice something happening in the US. Lots of startups are eating the market of PayPal, like Braintree, Stripe, Balance Payment, WePay, and they all provide one full package solution, very easy, quite expensive, and it's very interesting because in only one click, you can add a payment solution on your website. You don't have to go out and create an account on another system, and so it's very easy to integrate and easy for the user. And I think it's the way you go with Ogone and the acquirement of Tunes.
Interesting. And if I ask the question, if I push you a little bit, you know, where is that consumer money going to come from? You talk about smartphones. Everybody uses them. It's becoming integrated with online and point of sale. But from the consumer point of view, will people link or load the smartphones with credit cards? Therefore, we still continue using credit cards? Or are these wallets effectively relabeled bank accounts? Are we going to link phones to bank accounts? Perhaps Nick and Pieter may have different views on that.
Well, you're cheating, first of all. I was supposed to say that the wallet is just it's just a rename. In my company, I forbid anybody to talk about mobile wallets because it's just a rename of bank account. So it's the question. It's actually the $600 billion question. Are you going to link it to the credit card or to your bank account? Because the credit card or debit card are effectively links to your bank account / credit account. So that's where Visa, MasterCard owns this market. So if you link to them, you've just built nothing. You built a toy. But if you link straight to the bank or a credit provider, then suddenly you've done something.
Or does it matter at all where you link it, as long as you open the client account?
I mean, I think the most immediate opportunity in mobile is really to offer mobile as an additional channel of distribution only, and then I think the way to do that would be to create this user mandate beforehand. Have the user give you as a merchant or us as a payments company your credit card details and so on beforehand, so then the experience on the mobile phone is much more smooth. We don't really see at all a behavior where on the smartphone people go through the hassle of providing bank account details, credit card details, and so on. And then in the end, as you say, it's the money in the end comes from the bank account. That's a source.
If I can comment on that, I think there's one initiative that is really interesting to watch, other than our own seamless thing. It's the MCX, where Walmart, together with a lot of American retailers, have gone together to create a mobile payment platform outside of the card infrastructure. And they're doing that for a reason.
That's interesting. So could we go around and sort of take views on the giants of the industry creating their own payments platform? And it may be Walmart, but also the likes of Facebook, Google, Groupon, and others. Pieter, would you like to kick off?
Yeah, I'm in the luxury position of not having to be very opinionated about it. I can look at it and say, look, there's so much innovation going on there, and it's so unclear at the very moment. That from Adyen position, we just connect it for the merchant. We do it for more than 200 methods. If there's a 201st or 202nd, that's fine, and make sure that we wrap it together. I think it's very early now to be, we need to try things together and find out what works. And although I'd love it to be opinionated, I'm in the phase of, we'll just help the merchant with what they want and give the payment methods an opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my view would be we've seen a number of relatively credible groups try and go out and create a competing scheme to Visa and MasterCard and fail. And my attitude has always been, as long as you can drive them down to razor-thin margins and they work, why not incorporate them in your solution? And so if you look at iTunes, if you look at Amazon, you know, what they've done is they've used their commercial power to negotiate very good deals, and rather than reinventing the wheel, they've just stuck these commodity pieces in there. And it's not as exciting as leaving the old infrastructure behind conceptually, but from a consumer perspective, really, it's just as good. And so I do think the giants are going to have a massive role to play, and I think the giants in many cases may take a large chunk of the payments profit pool, but they'll do that, I think, using the building blocks that already exist.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one thought here is that interchange has dominated the economics of that payments profit pool for a very long time. If merchants act together, then they can do a lot to change that business model and drive down interchange and maybe fundamentally change the way people look at how money comes into that value chain. And then Visa and MasterCard's position might be less certain than it is today.
I think an interesting development here is really this trend, at least in some markets, away from the cards. Because I think Pieter has shown nicely how complex a credit card transaction is, how many people want to make money in this chain, and going around this, and it's still the highest fraud comes from credit cards. So we are a big supporter and a big believer in all those products that try to create an alternative to the card, that link it directly to the bank account, that cut out many of these middlemen from the issuer to the acquirer and so on. And I think that is a trend that is, or at least these kind of products are doing a very good job right now and have a great future.
Celine, any final remarks? I think we've been indicated that time is up.
No, I share your idea, but we have to find a way very easy for the user. Otherwise, they will still use the credit card and whatever the price, and the margin for us will be lower. So it's not an easy answer for the wallet, and I share the vision, but it depends on the way it's done and the way how easy it is for the user.
Perfect. Thank you to all panelists for participating in this and presenting their thoughts. Good news for all of us. Payments are becoming more frictionless, and as we've heard, all payment methods will be accepted. So good news for all of us. And again, thank you to everybody, and off to the next panel.